Uncharacteristically, the Colorado Avalanche drafted a lot this year, and I think they had a really fascinating group come out of the draft this season. To lead things off at 38th overall, they started the goalie run by taking Ilya Nabokov, KHL playoff most valuable player and goaltender for Metallurg Magnitogorsk. In his last year of NHL draft eligibility, Nabokov clearly was saving the best for last. I was pretty intrigued by Nabokov watching him this season. It seems like Colorado adored what they saw out of him, and the pedigree is there, the resume is there, and it seems like he'll be able to come over to North America sooner rather than later and maybe provide some really good depth for the Colorado Avalanche relatively quickly. I didn't really see this high-end, super athletic goaltender, but a very smart, technical, and tactical guy who just stopped a lot of pucks and kept things calm for the team throughout their playoff run. It was an interesting pick at 38. I might have gone a different direction, but if they're looking for goaltenders, he was a pretty good one. At 76th overall, they drafted Will Zellers of Shattuck St. Mary's High School, and I've always held prep school players to a pretty high standard because that level of play is a little strange, but I did really like Zellers at the Holinka tournament, and when I checked in on him with Shattuck here and there, I did like the offensive punch that he brings. He gets to the inside areas of the ice, he's a pretty good shooter, he gets to the net. He's a little undersized, and I think the skating and the speed and the pace of his game needs a bit of work, but the way I see it is it's kind of similar to how I felt about a Jackson Blake a few years ago, who also went to North Dakota like Zellers is, and has slowly evolved into a really high-end college player. Pro hockey, we'll see, but I think that you can afford to be patient and see what happens after a few years at North Dakota. At 121st, they drafted re-entry forward Jake Fisher. Now, I didn't really see a whole lot of Fisher last year, and I know there were some people who were fans of his. I didn't really see a huge amount of upside in him, but he was a pretty smart and dependable player, especially with the puck on his stick, played hard, he's got some size, and he did have a really good season with the Fargo Force this season in the USHL. He's headed to the University of Denver, so he's right in their backyard, and I guess that carries some value. He's an interesting pick that I think has a decent floor, but maybe not an enormously high ceiling, so I feel like if you end up with maybe a bottom six center here, you've done decently well. He has a bit of a ways to go to get there in my opinion, but it's possible. At 132nd, they drafted their second goaltender of the draft in Louka Cloutier from the Chicago Steel. Now, Cloutier had a bit of a tough season, as the Chicago Steel did not have the best year, so he faced a lot of pucks, and I felt that he played really well whenever I saw him. There were a few instances where I saw other players playing against him, and he was making some really high-end saves for the Chicago Steel here and there, and when I watched him in isolation, I liked him. He's probably one of my favorite goaltenders that I didn't have on my goaltender list that I put out last minute, because I also just didn't see enough of him, but what I did see I kinda liked, and there could be something here with some time in college. But then at 137, I think the Avalanche made one of the most intriguing and fascinating and potentially biggest upside picks of the entire draft by drafting goaltender Ivan Yunin. This guy played 6 games at the Russian junior hockey level this year and spent the majority of time at the Russian under-18 level. You can just set aside the Russian under-18 level because if you want to see a really wide quality of team gap, you can go to the Russian under-18 level. It's much worse than the Russian junior level, but in any case, I watched 4 of Yunin's 6 games that he played at the MHL level. The guy's a wild animal, probably one of the most athletic goaltenders that I have ever really paid attention to. Just a ridiculous athlete in the net. He's all over the place, all of the time, and if you can just refine him a little bit from here, I think you could have a tremendously talented goaltender. Relentlessly entertaining, a bit of a ways out. I think he's going to be a long-term project and slowly march his way up the depth chart in Omsk. But considering you just drafted Nabokov and then you drafted Cloutier, who you can send to college for a little while, Yunin could be the guy that comes last but may end up being the best of them all. I loved watching him play this year. I was thrilled to see him get drafted, and I was very surprised to see him drafted as highly as he was, which sounds weird because it's 137th overall, but this guy is an absolute riot, and I would really encourage people to go see what he can do in net because it's just a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure he has no medial collateral ligaments with how he goes up and down on the ice, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And then on 161st, they drafted Max Curran of the Tri-City Americans. Now this is a big Czech center who I think plays a pretty unrefined game, but he's pretty smart, he's got a lot of size, he's very young for this draft class, and I remember liking what I saw with him internationally last season. And this year, I just didn't see a tremendous amount of growth in his game, but I could see a decent floor with some low-level upside, but a pretty safe projection with Curran in enough time. He might need some time to acclimatize to North American pro hockey in a few years, and Tri-City, we'll see how things go with them in the next year or two with him, but I do like Curran, and there's an interesting base of talent here that you can build around, and if he fills out a little bit more and gets a little more physically mature, by all means there could be something here, because there have been moments I've liked with Curran throughout this season and last. At 185th, they drafted Tory Pitner of the Youngstown Phantoms, and this is one of the last guys I had on my list this year. I do really like Tory Pitner. I think, again, it's another relatively safe projection player. He's got the size and the physicality to play defensive hockey. He gets around the ice pretty well. He keeps his game simple but very effective, and he's going to the University of Denver, so he'll be in their backyard right from the get-go. I think Pitner's an interesting pick. I was surprised he was still available at 185th, and to me this is just an interesting upside selection in this range. At 5-on-5, I felt that he had pretty good production when you scale for his ice time, and in general, I was a fan of this pick, and it added to a pretty strong crop for Colorado considering the picks they had. At 215, Colorado took a big swing at the plate on Christian Humphreys. I felt Humphreys was a little bit of an underperformer during the season, but his under-18 tournament showcased a little more of what he was capable of. He's a high-intensity, high-skill player. He drives inside the middle of the ice. He's an all-around quite talented young man, and I think kind of flew under the radar a little bit when it came time for the draft. I asked around a little bit on why he slipped, and there were some reasons out there, and there are certainly factors here that might hold him back a little bit, but at 215th overall, in terms of just drafting good hockey players, he was a pretty good option in that range, so good for the Avalanche taking a chance on him, and we'll see how things go for him. Then at 217th, they drafted Nikita Prishchepov, and I went and watched him since the draft. He's a D+2 playing in the Quebec League who is under a point a game, and he didn't really blow me away. There were some moments of really good skill. He gets up the ice decently well. He is certainly a more aggressive offensive player than a lot of players in the Quebec League, but I don't know, this one seems like a long shot. It just seems like a pick that's nice to have been made, and we'll see what happens with him, but I don't have huge expectations for him, and I think that's totally fine at 217th overall. Maybe there's something here with development and time in the American League, but I don't know, I didn't see it right now, and he's a little older for this draft class in the first place. So that's it for the Colorado Avalanche, and I'm going to give them a 3A. The 3 is really because my favorite picks of theirs really on paper were goaltenders, and goaltenders are always a bit of a mixed bag. But I do think they drafted 3 good goaltenders, especially Ivan Yunin. I really, really love watching him play, and I really hope that Colorado and their fans do too in the future. But they just drafted a lot of guys that I could see playing relatively limited NHL minutes, but in the NHL. Guys like Fiser and Curran and Pitner. Will Zellers has upside, I think, if you leave him in college for a long enough time, which I think is a good bet to make, and the same goes for Christian Humphreys, but none of those players are guarantees in my books. But considering what they had, I think almost every single pick they made could bring decent value, even if it isn't enormously high upside value at the end of the day. Good players, some really interesting goaltenders, and I just enjoyed their draft class overall. There's just not a ton of upside there, but they're all good players. So that's it for Colorado. If you liked it, you can check the description box for our Fanatics affiliate link where you buy anything in the store and we'll get a small kickback. Or you could go to Scouching.ca and get a subscription where you'll get access to a private Discord server, early access to blog content, exclusive blog content, as well as data tables you won't find anywhere else on drafted and undrafted prospects around the world. So that's it for the Colorado Avalanche, and from here we're going to move on to the Columbus Blue Jackets.